It's easy to take somebody's opinion about a random movie overwhelmingly personally when you've made that movie your entire personality. Hey y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. I've made a couple of videos in the past talking about toxic fandom, my experiences with toxic fandom. I've read fun, mean comments on this channel to the detriment of my mental health and well-being, but I've been thinking, which is dangerous, it's always dangerous when I think, but I've been thinking lately about what it is that makes fandom so incredibly toxic. And this is not to call out Star Wars fans or Marvel fanboys or even the Dune devotees who hate me with all the passion of 1,000 suns. This is genuinely not a targeted attack or statement on any fandom, but what it is an exploration in toxic fandom and dealing with assholes, so to speak, on the internet, and what makes people react the way that they do when it comes to these fandom spaces. So in my thinking, I've come up with a number of different reasons why people behave the way they do when it comes to these interactions on the basis of fandom on the internet, and I hope that you'll join me in the next few minutes of this video and come on this journey so that we can really explore why fandoms are as toxic as they are. So to kick things off, I think people get very attached and devoted to certain aspects of fandom. I think it's a really human need to find something to believe in, and for thousands of years, right? The course of human history has essentially been pushed along by people devoted to something, whether it be the idea of manifest destiny, for instance, or things like different religions have really turned the wheels of history, whether they be good or bad, but it's really been a driving force for a lot of people. So I think that there's a really innate human need to find something to attach yourself to, and I think as history has gone on, humans have become less and less attached and committed to religion as that one guiding light in their life. And so we look elsewhere. So you might not be a devout follower of any religion, but you probably feel like Star Wars is your religion, and you might, as a result, feel like you're a literal Jedi and that every Star Wars thing that comes out is a personal attachment to you, and therefore when somebody on the internet says they thought the Acolyte was dog shit, well, now you want to tell them that their mother was a whore in the first place and that they should shut the f up. And it seems like a stretch to go from this show is bad to your mom sucks, but the problem is that when people devote themselves and attach themselves to something wholeheartedly, it becomes part of their identity. Which leads to my next point, that when you make a fandom part of your identity, then any attack on that fandom or on a work out of that fandom feels like a personal attack. I can't personally say that I feel this way. These days, I tend to sort of look at it from a let's just let bygones be bygones, we can agree to disagree sort of thing. But I feel that a lot of people don't exactly see that disconnect. And so when this is your thing, if you're the person that feels like Agatha All Along, for instance, was made for you, and somebody makes a YouTube video saying this is absolute shit and I refuse to watch it, well, now you start to feel like, are you saying I'm absolute shit and that I shouldn't even be here? And now there's a need for an attack. And the unfortunate reality of that is that taking these things so personally really does nobody any favors. At the end of the day, unless somebody literally says you're a fucking moron for liking this stupid thing, then their opinions on that thing really have no bearing on you or your life or what they think of you as an individual, so why not just move on? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is an accidental segue, because this is an unscripted video, into my next point, the inability to move on past voices that you don't want to hear. Now, this is kind of a double-edged sword. I tend to hear things like this all the time. If you don't like it, don't watch it. The fact of the matter is that, for me, this is actually my job. So for me, the don't like it, don't watch it argument doesn't work. But the fact of the matter is that the same thing could be applied to people who don't like my content. You might think I'm a real negative bitch, that I've never said anything nice in my whole fucking life. People on the internet can choose to click away, because the last time I checked, nobody gets a check in the mail every month for watching SnarkyJay videos. The internet would do very well by moving on Don't look at people you don't agree with. Don't hate watch things you don't like. It's that much easier, if it's not your job for some reason, to move on. But it's hard for people, because when people become so staunch in their beliefs about these things, it's almost a necessity that is driven from within to go and correct the people that you don't agree with, to go and defend this thing on the internet, when realistically it would be that much easier to scroll past the obnoxious thumbnail that's already telling you they didn't like this thing that you loved. It would be that much easier to close the tab, go do something else, and realistically, I've also come to learn that it would be a lot easier on people's mental health to not watch and interact with things that upset them. That, I think, is yet another point why fandom is so toxic. The world that we live in is difficult. It's no secret that 99.9% of the world, everybody has their problems, and nobody's life is a walk through the roses. And so I think we find these bits of fantasy, right? And we cling to these characters in these movies and these IPs that we happen to love. And this is my glimmer of light. This is the one thing that really makes you smile to think about. And when you open Twitter and you see somebody shitting on it, that is just the first thing to set you off. And instead of doing what I said earlier and moving on, they look for conflict, because we're all carrying this baggage of life, all the things that have been done to us, things that have happened to us. And so I think it's a very human thing. Unfortunately, it's one of our bad traits that when we feel frustrated, we want to take those things out on other people. So on the internet, if you happen to say you liked or didn't like this thing and somebody goes off on you about it in an almost inhumane and unhinged way, it says way less about you and your opinions and way more about the fact that this person is just going through something and you are the target of their frustrations right now. You're the thing that they're gonna just unload on. And I think we do a lot better as a society to just not do that, or to at least do a better job of ignoring it. Now, in terms of people unloading frustrations online, I think that's another aspect of what makes fandom so toxic. Fandoms grow through the ability to communicate online, and there are so many people communicating online at a certain time that you are literally never going to fucking meet. And that is the key here. It's the fact that you can call somebody a stupid bitch and know that you're not gonna get punched because it's all online. You can pretty much set a username to be anything. You can go and start an online fight and never have it matter. It's never gonna result in a punch to the face. Nobody's ever gonna call your mom and tell you to quit being a dick, because there's this level of disconnect and anonymity that makes people bold. And so because you have all these factors mixing in, and now you have this level of detachment and anonymity, people get fucking crazy. Because for the most part, there's not gonna be any real consequences. And that leads to perhaps one of my more controversial opinions about the whole fandom thing. I think human beings were never meant to communicate with and hear opinions from so many people. At the end of the day, we are mammals. We are more developed animals. We share a lot of traits with them. And if you look at the course of human history, there were tribes, there were families, we were hunter-gatherers, we were nomads. There's a long history before we figured out cave paintings and writing and all the different things that eventually led us to where we are today. We were people in groups. And before it became this global thing, we had the people that surrounded us. And oftentimes we shared ideas with them because we came from the same place, from the same people presumably, and we had similar thoughts. And so I think one of the intrinsic things about human beings is that most of us do not like to have our opinions challenged. Our viewpoint is so singular and so focused on our own unique perspective that it's really hard for us as human beings to accept that anybody else's way of thinking makes sense, because we're so set into our own. And it's only through your exposure to other people that you might start to change those beliefs. But back in the day, you wouldn't be exposed to those people, and you wouldn't have to defend your beliefs to as many people. There might be 2 or 3 people in your tribe that disagreed with you, unless your opinions were absolutely deranged. But for the most part, there was a very sort of almost hive-minded mentality. And so now we live in a world where you might have a thought. You now feel the need to share it on the internet. And that's great. That's exactly what I do. I have thoughts and I put them out on the internet. I have already come to the conclusion, and I've gotten very used to the fact that I'm going to be challenged on all of these things. But the fact of the matter is that people are being challenged on their thoughts almost on a global scale. You open the internet and you see 17 million reels from strangers that think and look at the world in totally different ways. And that might become overwhelming, and now I gotta leave a fucking shitty comment on somebody's profile because I can't believe that anybody thinks this way. Or maybe you felt that you had to share your thought, and now there's hundreds of people pissed off that you had anything different to say than what they thought, and now it's an all-out war. And I think that that is one of the main issues that we're all facing today. I'm not saying let's go back to cave paintings and messenger pigeons. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that I think it's a real struggle for people to hear as much as they hear, to say as much as they say, and have as much conflict between opinions and thoughts, because we really weren't meant to communicate the way that we do. It's a struggle on the mind, and it's a struggle on people's emotions, and that's why I think we have as much conflict as we have. And aside from that pretty logical route of thinking that I think I just laid out, I would say that the other thing that has made fandom even more toxic than it has been, I would say I've been really invested in this sort of stuff for the past 12, 13 years, but I've only seen it get as bad as it has over the past maybe 3 to 5. There's the saying that the things you don't bring up at the dinner table or with strangers are sex, religion, and politics. And politics have somehow been intrinsically woven into every aspect of our lives. So never mind that politics make the government and essentially make the worlds in which we live, but they have also managed to make themselves a part of fandom, of Star Wars, of Marvel, of DC, of video games. Everything that we use for entertainment has now been connected to politics, despite the fact that we want to use these things as escapes from politics in the real world. Why? It's anybody's guess. I'm sure there are so many reasons for why that's happening, and I have my own theories, but I'm not going to get into them right now. The fact of the matter is that politics have become interwoven with the things that we love. And so now you can almost find clear divides politically in things as nonsensical as Star Wars and Marvel and superheroes and video games. And so because these things have become tied to issues that are so politicized, there's really no way for anybody to talk about any of it without it automatically being a political statement. The issue is that since politics are on that list of the 3 things you don't bring up at the dinner table, now it makes these arguments more personal. Now it makes these arguments less about the nonsense and fantasies that we cling to, and more about morals and ideology. And that's the biggest issue I think that's really come up sort of recently, is that it's not about identity or attachment or frustrations within ourselves anymore. Now, it almost feels like these things are as life and death as an election could be, right? You look at things like Star Wars and DC, and it almost feels like people handle it with that level of gravity. There's no way to have a civilized discussion because somebody's gonna jump down your throat, somebody's gonna make an assumption about you politically. It is incredibly counterproductive to take it both that seriously, but also to be that completely opposed to having civilized discussions about these things. We can always discuss, but there's no need to jump to arguments and threats and just absolutely unhinged behavior towards a stranger who just happened to like or dislike something that you felt the opposite way about. I personally interact with more toxic fandom than I ever thought I would interact with. And since I've gotten into doing this and sharing my thoughts on the internet, I have found that so many people are so willing to make assumptions about you and to just lay out incredibly cruel insults based solely on your opinion of a film or TV show or cartoon or video game. And I think that it says a lot about the world that we live in when people are that willing to be so cruel over what I feel is absolute nonsense. But personally, I feel choosing to try to understand why these things happen is a lot more productive than just getting pissed off about it or going and insulting these people in return. I think a lot of the issues that I laid out are pretty much chalked up to human nature. It's just we're dealing with human nature on a more grand scale because now we're dealing with hundreds of thousands of people every day by way of the internet, so I don't think this is getting any better. But even if fandom stays toxic forever, I hope that we can at the very least find the little silver linings that we enjoy and ignore every fucking asshole that has ever had something stupid to say on the internet. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram. And if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I'll add links to all of those in the description below. And let me know your thoughts on the truth about toxic fandom in the comments below.